I take my responsibility very seriously. Like, I think to me, we have the ability to impact, change, and save lives. And anyone who works for me has heard me say that a million times. And I say it over and over because I don't ever want to lose that focus. It truly is about that impact.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Exact Marketing Advice Podcast. Today, I have Kathryn Wilson with me from Vue Health. Kathryn, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well. So, if you will, kind of tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, again, I'm Kathryn Wilson. I'm the CEO of Vue Health. Founded the company 8 years ago. I'm based here in Boston. Have 3 kids, 2 of which are twins that were born 6 weeks before I started the agency. And then I have a little surprise that came 3 years ago, Charlie Grace, the miracle I never knew I needed. And proud mom, proud CEO, love my team. My life is, I say, I have 3 kids plus a company, which makes the 4th kid, and really just very passionate about what we do.
Absolutely. So, based on the name Vue Healthcare, you specialize in healthcare pharmaceuticals. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how really being niche in that industry really helps you provide clients with great value?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had my first internship at 18 at a pharmaceutical advertising agency and have kind of stayed in the industry since then. So that's a long time. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and I've learned that there's a lot that can be done and should be done, but there's a lot of people that aren't doing it that well. And I say that because it's become layer upon layer upon layer, and this hierarchy and 56 VPs and these huge companies where it's like turning a barge to get anything done. And, the longer I stayed in my career, the more I realized that I wasn't spending time with clients. I was spending time with spreadsheets and worrying about profit margins and billable hours. And I really just kind of thought, like, profitability is a natural outcome of doing great work. And that's what I want to spend my time doing. Within this pharmaceutical space, it's a huge area of passion for me. I myself have a chronic illness that I've lived with for my whole life. I have family members who have suffered from various things. And I've seen the impact that information, education, and access can really provide to someone and empower them, whether they're a healthcare professional or they're a person that's living with a disease. I never like to call them patients because you don't walk up to someone and say, like, hi, I'm diabetes. You say, hi, I'm Tom. And I happen to be living with this. And we want to really put that emphasis on living and how to get the best health outcomes and the best results from what you are dealing with personally. So just really focusing there, spending our time getting and being empathetic about the journey that these folks are on, and also really understanding at a core level how this information and the ability to have the right conversations, ask the right questions, have the right resources can really impact your long-term health and well-being.
Absolutely. And I know in this industry specifically that it is very complex and it is highly regulated. So talk to me a little bit about some of that and how you navigate that and the benefits that clients can get from coming to somebody who is truly an expert in the space.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, our space is highly regulated and it's highly watched. I mean, you can't watch the evening news without hearing something about big bad pharma. And really what I'm here to do is to make sure that people understand the innovation and the growth and the health outcomes that are mostly happening in this country. And big pharma has kind of a bad reputation, but if you even look back at the pandemic and how they were able to come together, activate, and use each other and each other's resources to help us get through that, it's really, really empowering. But the way through is always with fact, right? And we have to be very, very, very careful all the time about everything we say. We can't overpromise. We must overdeliver. We have to make sure that when we're talking to someone, we're not giving them information that makes them even think something that isn't something that's possible. So we really spend our time. I built an entire company around my scientific team, and that's where everything starts. It starts with my PhDs, my MDs, my PharmDs. And they really take everything and dissect it and pull it apart and show and tell us how this mechanism of action works, how this is simplifying whatever. And we really use that foundation to then create the strategy. And all of that, because the scientific foundation is so strong, we're able to navigate very quickly and elevate conversations very quickly without a ton of issues around regulation.
Oh, I love that. No, that's wonderful. Definitely a benefit. I think that there's a lot of people out there that may actually be floundering and not realize that, there are people out there that specialize in this specifically. And so I think it is very important that, agency owners and businesses themselves actually know that this is a possibility, because this is highly niche and very specialized
Mm-hmm.
and very important. When you think about, like, advertising pharmaceutical medications, and just that needs to be right. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, that's the facts, and they have to be correct. So I think that's really, really cool. Now, before we started recording, you mentioned something about how you have people within your agency work, and how you team them up. And can you talk to me a little bit about that? I found that very interesting.
Yeah. So my agency, again, we are designed to be nimble. We're designed to be cost effective. We're designed so that companies can get their message out there without having to, I mean, quite literally, without having to raise drug prices because of marketing these products. So we're really there to be a true partner. But part of being a true partner is having that relationship and that engagement with the client and the people that are working with you. So when we talk about how our team is structured, I make sure that there's a couple of things happening. One, we have 30 now 4 core members of the team. So they're the full-time employees that sit under my roof and are day in and day out. Then we have over 350 people in what I call our stable, and they have all kinds of skill sets. And those skill sets could be anything from prompt writing to a certain kind of design skill to a certain type of writing skill or programming skill, whatever that may be. And then on top of that, we have them all work within this proprietary system that I created to map them in terms of their strengths and their weaknesses, where they are, where they excel, where their personality sits, how they handle conflict. And once we map those folks, we've created an algorithm that matches people so that we have the right amount of antagonism, we have the right amount of compatibility, and then we have the right amount of structure, so that when we bring people together, they have this instant bond. And it's made it so seamless to start working with folks and really understanding who they are and what makes them tick, so that we can make sure that we're optimizing our methodology in order to support and serve them.
I love that. I think that in itself could be a true business, to just go out to agencies and say, hey, we want to start utilizing this for our agency, just to map our teams out in a way. I think that is absolutely amazing. And I can imagine that it truly helps clients as well, because you have this fully built out, robust team that's kind of across the gamut, that can meet whatever the needs are.
Yep.
I think that's a phenomenal idea. I think more people should definitely put that into practice for sure. So can you talk to me just a little bit about, like, how you blend, like, traditional marketing with digital strategies in the healthcare space? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's always tricky, right? I mean, there's a lot of layers there. The pharma industry is one of kind of the last of the door-to-door salesmen and women. But access is a huge problem because doctors don't have time. They don't have time to stand around and talk about, what you're doing and what you need, because they have more patients than they can handle. They have more paperwork than they can handle. They have more barriers and things that they're up against. And everything from managing, because most of them are running their own company, right? So they're managing overhead, and they're managing supplies, and they're managing staff, and then they're managing patients. And, so there's a lot there. So, in the old days, it was really heavily focused on that salesperson, that sales rep. And it's since now changed. And digital marketing, omni-channel marketing, really important because we need doctors to understand and have things top of mind so that they don't have to stop and go research in the moment. And so we use digital technologies and digital media very heavily to keep products top of mind and keep them so that they're accessible and they could quickly find and retrieve that information that they need in the time that they need it. And, you know, not to say that any one channel, and I think that's where omni-channel has become such a big word. There's no one channel that answers all needs, but the collection of all of them together, when deployed properly, really allows for that surround sound. And when you have that surround sound, you're elevating the conversation, even in passive moments, which is, really important.
Absolutely. No, I'm a big believer in a true holistic plan. I think that clients, you have to start at that top of the funnel and really walk them through that decision making process and recognizing that, in a perfect world, we would love for somebody to just get an ad, click through the website one time and order that product or, engage with that. But that's really just not the way it works. And so, and the decision making process with things like medical conditions and things that is so very it's private and it's very emotional. There are times when you know there's like the acceptance phase that you even have to go through, and so it's like you have to walk that journey,
Mhm.
with the person. And so I think it's really important that you have to stay in front of them as they're walking down that funnel. But it is fun to see how when a well-built strategy really does all come together and you see those people walking down the funnel and it is moving the needle. I think that that's, like I said, where I feel most fulfilled, in the space of like helping clients achieve their needs, and seeing those differences be made. So I love that. So as far as like different platforms that some of your clients are leveraging, can you tell me just a few of your favorites?
Yeah, so there's a number of them. It's funny. It's we're watching the world change in front of us. Where Meta and TikTok and all of these channels that were almost considered toys or play places are becoming critical to success for communicating information. So one of the things we're even talking to your company about is clinical trial recruitment and how to get to where people are, where they're in a place where they can be receptive to, oh, maybe I'm a candidate for this. Maybe I can self-select in and not have, sort of the stigma around it. I mean, it used to be that, clinicians would say, hey, I'm part of this trial and so on and so forth. But getting these trials recruited for is really, really time consuming and very, very difficult. So if we can help speed that process up using media in order
Yeah.
to introduce the idea in a place where they feel disarmed, that's really great. We also use LinkedIn quite a bit for similar things. There's always our media partners, the Peer Direct and Doximity, and those companies that are really wonderful and have great offerings because they've captured an audience. And so we really love to leverage those as well. But I think any time I'm looking at these sorts of situations, there is no one size fits all. There is no, here's the cookie cutter answer for all pharma brands. It really is in the dissecting who they are, matching target lists, matching NPI numbers, making sure that we truly understand where our audience is, and then using things like geo-targeting and geofencing to really elevate and support a strong ROI. One of the things that my team will hear me say more times than they probably want to hear it is, I don't care about the number of eyeballs that got on something. Just because an eyeball saw it doesn't mean it registered. So how do we make it sticky? How is everything going to stick together so that it does actually move the needle? Because number of impressions is just a number. It's really, what is the call to action and how are we pulling that through and where are we taking them? And does that make sense? And is it logical in the next part of the story? Or are we taking them from, some simple banner ad or a Facebook meta post, something like that, and then taking them into way too much information where they quickly become overwhelmed? Everybody kind of needs I call them breadcrumbs, where you're just kind of following the bouncing ball as you're getting to, the next part of the story. And the story is unfolding at a pace that you can actually receive it. So that's all, really important. So I'm kind of platform agnostic in a lot of ways. And it's always about what is the right thing for this audience, particularly in our work around rare disease, because by definition, there's not a lot of these folks. And when there's not a lot of folks, casting this super wide net doesn't really work. How can we bring it in? How can we figure out where these people are and how to support them and help them getting to the treatment that they need?
No, absolutely. That's what, if being in sales, often we're asked, what's your elevator pitch? And I
Mhm.
said, when somebody asks me that, I just tell them I failed the test, because I don't believe in an elevator pitch, because I believe from a marketing standpoint, you truly just have to go in with both of your ears open and listen to what those needs are. And then you truly have to formulate what you're going to suggest based on what the client's needs are. And you're so right, that changes from client to client. And you do have to be platform agnostic and understand that, what one client may need to be on social, and one client may need to be in programmatic. And, they most likely might need to be in both spaces, and, to walk down that funnel. And so it's very interesting. And so I always say this is not a one size fits all business. I don't believe in selling packages, so to
Mhm.
say. That's you have to be one on one. It's truly a custom approach based on what the needs, what the goals are. And so I always say, when I go into a meeting, I'm going in with both ears opening, listening to what those needs are, and then really kind of gearing, what are the holes? Where are we not meeting the needs? What do we need to do to really help move the needle? Where is the opening? And that is how I really truly gear my pitch, so to say, if you can call it that. I don't think that's
Mhm.
a fair thing for it. I think it's more just about, like a doctor, go in, listen to the patient, and then diagnose the problem based on, okay, here are the symptoms. This is what I think will help fix that.
Right.
And so that's kind of more of, I think, the stance that we work from, is just that truly custom approach for every single campaign. I think you have to have that in this space.
Agree.
And being strategy minded, I think, helps a lot. So that's, I say there's two types of people in the world. I think you have your creatives, and I think you have your strategy minds. You do have some of those people that have this crazy ability to be savant in both. I did not get the creative abilities. I'm more of the strategy girl. I'm more of the throw the crayons kind of girl. Well, on the creative side of things, but putting together a well built strategy for media, I think, is lots of fun. And I love, like I said, watching people walk through the funnel, I think is very rewarding to me. So
Absolutely. When you watch these programs execute and you see the conversions and you see how people are going from, whether it's a piece of media or a single message or wherever they start, and then watch them and what's nice about pharma is we can track them through diagnosis and treatment. So you really do watch that whole process and you just know, like, that's another life saved. That's another life impacted. That's another life that is um, being honored, really. And another doctor or nurse practitioner or physician's assistant that got to go home and say, I did something really meaningful for my patient today. And ultimately, I don't care what anybody says. Doctors, nurses, these are the most altruistic people in the world. And they genuinely want to do good. They genuinely want to help their patients. They genuinely care. They wouldn't have gone through all that school, all that residency, all of that. Oh, that's a lot, right? Just
yeah,
to get a paycheck. So, when you really unwrap it that way and when you think about them and what they're trying to do, I take my responsibility very seriously. Like, I think to me, we have the ability to impact, change, and save lives. And anyone who works for me has heard me say that a million times. And I say it over and over because I don't ever want to lose that focus. It truly is about that impact. I'm not selling sneakers, not to say that there's anything wrong with selling sneakers.
right.
That's a fine thing to do. But for me, when I'm doing what I do, people live longer and live better. And that is what puts my head on the pillow at night and able to sleep.
No, absolutely. I love that. I feel strongly about that as well. And I say, the success of some campaigns can't be measured in dollars. It is very rewarding when you're looking at it all the way through that journey and you're seeing, okay, this is another life saved. That's a different level of feeling satisfied and
Mhm.
contentment in your position for sure. That's great. So, if you had just had one thing that you truly wish more healthcare organizations like understood about effective marketing, what would that be?
Honestly, the thing I would say, and this is going to be poking the bear a little bit, but the thing I would say is that a lot of companies think they need the Madison Avenue agency. They need the biggest agency. They need the one that everybody recognizes to get their job done. But at the core, an agency is nothing more than their people and their process. And if you skew towards name brand, right, you are probably doing a disservice to your brand and to your team, because that's a lot of A team pitching, C team executing. And we have a model that says, nope, there's only an A team. That's all we have. And if you're not an A player, you're not on the team. There's no seat at the table for even a B player, because what we do is that important, right? And so we can't afford that misstep. So when I think back on that, and when I think about, how these RFPs go out and these RFIs go out, and it's like, oh, tell them how many thousands of people you have in your company. I'm like, you don't need thousands. You're going to work with 5 regardless.
Right.
So find the people that are the best match for you, that truly understand where you're going and why you're going there, and what's so important about getting there and not missing that mark, and being willing to roll up their sleeves and be a partner with you, and not say, oh, I'm just cashing a check and whatever happens happens. Going back to my statement before, profitability is a natural outcome of doing great work. We are profitable, have been since day one. And we are profitable because we do great work. And that's what's the most important thing.
I say all the time, I think you do have people that show up to work for a paycheck. I don't work for money. And I think that that is what truly makes the difference. And I think that, if you work for money, you're never going to be truly content or satisfied. But like when you have a different purpose, and I think that's exactly what you're saying, is that money is just the byproduct of doing great work for your clients. And I
Absolutely.
feel strongly about that. And that has been a very valuable lesson to me that our CEO, Carlton Beers, told me long ago was, I did one job in my life, and that was selling fruit for my uncle for $5 a day when I was a child. And I said, from that time on, I never wanted to work for a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't work for money. I have to have a purpose higher than that. And I think that people who work outside of that money purpose are the most successful, where they truly just have a more purpose driven attitude for being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that to be very rewarding, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. So I know that just looking into the future, there has been this buzzword that everybody says, and that is AI. Talk
Mm-hmm.
to me about how you're integrating it, how it's affecting the space, and what people can do to look to the future as far as AI goes.
AI is both fascinating and scary, because the ability to um, provide misinformation or to skew the conversation just using someone's voice or likeness is very real. And it's something that um, I, in particular, am very, very concerned about. I think there was a celebrity today, I forget who it was, who they used AI to pretend that she was endorsing a product. Oh, Jamie Lee Curtis, I think. And she's going crazy right now trying to say, I am my word. I am authentic and I am real, and I'm not going to be endorsing this product. I don't even know these people. But that is a big problem, especially as you think about people creating a like it and likeness to a physician or someone making those kinds of decisions. However, the upside of it is the access to information, the access to, and you have to be responsible. There's certain AI platforms that are referenced and are fact checked and are really smart. And then there's others that are not as advanced and are just pulling things from anywhere on the internet. So there's the nuances there, but it has helped us a great deal, particularly around concepting and finding the perfect image, or being able to, just last year, we were able to put together a commercial for a product. And we were able to use AI to do it. And we could do it in a third of the time of doing an actual shoot, an eighth of the cost of doing an actual shoot. And when you're using it for that and responsibly, it can save a tremendous amount of time, energy, effort, and money. Like one of, as I mentioned, my stable of people, and I mentioned a prompt writer. This person's job literally is to understand the assignment, understand the strategy, and then write a series of prompts, almost like code, to put together a video or to put together content or to put together this creative that tells that story. And, it wasn't all that long ago that process would have taken months and months and months and round after round after round of regulatory review. And now we can storyboard it in an afternoon and figure out what's the best and right way to move that forward. And so that's incredibly rewarding, because time is money, and that getting that information out there and it not taking that long to get that information out there is really impactful and profound. So it's got it's got the little devil and angel on both sides of its shoulder, but it's not going anywhere. So we're going to have to learn how to work with it, make it responsible, especially in a really regulated industry, and use it for good.
Absolutely. No, I fully agree with that. And when I first started using the platforms and really utilizing AI and chat GPTs of the world and things, I, um, I was just using it as a starting place, so to
Mm-hmm.
say. And then I've kind of somewhere along the line realized, but what if it's my questions? What if I'm not prompting it correctly? What if I could take it a step further
Mm-hmm.
with just a quick question that could get it to where I want it to be, and really train it to the way I think, the way I speak, those types of things, and really make it what I want it to be. And I will tell you that, I have some people that I work with that blow me away, and theirs is named, and one is he's named his Silas, and that means say it like a storyteller.
Oh.
And he says that when he talks to his wife is like, "You and Silas spend way too much time together. Do I need to be worried about you and Silas?" And so, like, when he gets ready to start a new project, he's like, "Hey, Silas, we've got a new project." And he's like, "All right, rock star, what are we about to get into?" So really training your AI to really speak the way you speak and communicate what you want to communicate, I think is really important. But, like you said, I do think that there are could be some triggers there that could lead it the other way. And when we talk about brands, I think it's really important that we don't want to lose our brand identity to an AI. We really have to keep that very personal, and especially when you're dealing with something as personal as healthcare.
Right.
That's very private and very intimate and very emotional for a lot of people, because you're talking about their health and wellness. And I told you, I found out from an early age that if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything.
That's right.
So it's really a scary thing. And so I think it's really important from the healthcare field that we speak in a very authentic way to clients and things. And so I know that AI is here to stay. I know that it's something that we do have to embrace, as the years go on. But I'm like you, I think there's a very fine line with it that we have to walk and make sure that we keep it in the direction that we want it to go,
Yep.
without overtaking brand identity and brand voice, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I think even as you look at user generated content on things like TikTok and things like that, as people start talking about their healthcare and their medication that they're on, they're not necessarily trained, right? But they can create all of this content and they can become influencers in their own right. So even that is something that we have to really keep an eye on and be always social listening, so that if somebody's talking about a product doing something that's off label or that hasn't been studied or whatever the case may be, that we're really trying to maintain that line of what the drug can do, how it does it, and maintaining that story of the scientific story that provides that platform.
Oh, no, absolutely. I would imagine that's a very fine line where it could truly lead to like patient harm very quickly. And
Hmm.
I think maybe some of these influencers don't realize the weight that they carry for some people.
That's
And
true.
that is very scary to me. I've seen some things where it's like, okay, I know that that doesn't look right,
Mhm.
like on TikTok or, just when you're scrolling and it's like you can tell it's like an AI overwrite, but it's like, what about when it really gets to a point where people are not going to be able to distinguish? And that's a scary thought. And so we, as the audience for anything, are going to really have to be able to discern and disseminate what is factual, what is not factual, what is true, where do we go to find these correct sources, who do we trust overall.
That
um,
is an excellent point. I think, you know, the onus is on the end user, right? And you have to fact check everything. You can't even necessarily trust professional journalists right now because everyone seems to have an agenda, whatever their agenda may be. So it's really checking and double checking and triple checking and ensuring that you have the right information and that you're going to credible places and that you're not like I say, like how many deaths are caused by memes, whether it's the Tide Pod challenge or the whatever these things are, that people just like, oh, well, they're doing it, it must be okay. And then the next thing you know, you're racking up, teenagers getting sick or getting hurt, or people like, and you see it all the time in the supplement space and these multi-level marketing people who are, selling you the thing that's going to prevent you from having to have plastic surgery, or it's going to do this or it's going to do that. And we have to remember that these things do not have the scientific rigor, the scientific testing and studies behind them that true pharmaceuticals do. So it's really important that you pay attention to the claims and what people are saying, and then how they can support and back that up.
Absolutely. I think that's wonderful advice for anybody that's listening. So, just overall, I know that you are head in the space all day, every day. So, tell me where you see the future of healthcare marketing going in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think healthcare marketing is going to continue to rely heavily on the experts and the professionals and the KOLs and the thought leaders. It's going to rely heavily on thought leadership and the dissemination of that. The world's just getting noisier. It's just getting more crowded. It's harder to break through. It's harder to um, get FaceTime, get the right combination of things together for people to get that information. So it's really about the fearless pursuit of old and new. For the first time in probably 12 years, I recommended a direct mail program the other day
Huh.
because for the longest time, mail was dead. We are not doing that anymore. But now it's like, well, maybe it's back alive again, or maybe it's, using FedEx or a bright blue envelope, whatever it is that makes you stand out, because all these other channels are getting so noisy and messy. So it's, to me, I always say everything old is new again is in this space. Technology is certainly going to be a huge factor and really important. But, you know, that old thing about it takes 7 touches for somebody to retain a message, and then it was 11 touches for somebody to retain a message. I'm going to argue that it's going to go to 20 or 25 as there's so much noise bombarding us everywhere we go, that we've become really effective at tuning so much out that you really are going to have to hit people multiple places in multiple ways and multiple times with the same message so that they get to the next place so that you can get on that breadcrumb trail. And technology will continue to evolve. We'll continue to see how this goes, but ultimately the thing that has to ride under all of that is science, fact, and empathy. And when those three things are applied, the channel is doesn't really matter. You can make your mark anywhere that you need to.
Oh man, that's powerful. I totally agree with that. That's really good stuff right there, Catherine. So just to kind of in closing, if we have healthcare companies, if we have agencies that are working with healthcare companies and they just feel like they're not where they need to be and they just need some help, tell me what the best way for them to get in touch with you would be.
So I joke all the time that I'm the most accessible person on the planet. You can smoke signal me, you can text me, you can call me, you can go through my website, you can show up at my front door if you'd like. But um, honestly, my LinkedIn profile is up to date with all of my contact information, and that gets you directly to my cell phone, my personal email, my professional email, which happens to also be my personal email because why have two emails? So really reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm happy just to help. If you just need some advice, I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy to pitch in and do what needs to get done to help a company win a pitch or to help them to get to the next level with a client that they currently have. So however I can be of service and of help, I'm happy to be.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been very informative and I've really enjoyed the conversation. So I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. I know you are a very busy woman. So I do appreciate you taking the time to stop by and chat with us this evening.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It was really great to talk to you. I look forward to continuing to work together, and we'll continue this conversation as the months go on.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Take care.